damning Epstein emails. It's evidence that is clearly rocking the Trump White House. And now, congressional Democrats, who first released the handful of Epstein emails that implicated Trump, are finding that what they're doing with facts is working. Remember, this was a development where the Democrats used those emails to bring facts to what had at times felt like a Trump propaganda fight. But the emails, the facts, starting yesterday morning, upended everything. Those damning emails driving headlines and outrage across the nation. Trump being alleged by Epstein to have known about the girls. Of course he knew about the girls, he was told. Some Trump voters, people around the world, all reacting to this. Epstein and his now convicted conspirator Maxwell discussed in 2011 how Trump spent, quote, hours with a victim at Epstein's house. And so those first emails, if you're following this story, swiftly led to thousands more. And the only reason there were thousands of other documents, emails, material sitting around Congress was that Republicans had it and had been holding it all back, holding back that material on Epstein from the public. Now, Democrats had forced their hand yesterday morning, and so Republicans then dropped more material. Congress is going further. It is now on a path to vote on releasing even more Epstein material. And so I'm going to show you a few more things in the reaction, but as we kind of take this in a day into this story, basically, we can see how facts and pressure can still matter in this MAGA era, even on an issue where Donald Trump has pulled out all the stops to pressure his own party, and it's his Republican Party that controls both houses of Congress. And yet here we are watching more material come out and a glide path to a vote, which is expected to have even more Republican defections. Indeed, most members of Congress willing to say anything about this now escalating Trump-Epstein crisis have been uniformly negative, including Republicans.
I am for transparency. I do think this was a disaster for the White House.
These are damning, and this is, I think, the tip of the iceberg.
Any information that's released has to be taken seriously.
This set of documents just should persuade them that one way or the other, we are going to see these files.
The American people deserve clarity on this issue.
Let's have the left and the right come together to say enough with the Epstein class. They need to go.
I think we need to get that information out. I think transparency is important.
This pales in comparison to what the Department of Justice has.
Now, those are voices from both parties, and they're confronting the Epstein bombshell. And among Republicans, there are a lot of folks bracing for how much worse it can get, because a lot's changed here in the past day and a half. The new Epstein-Trump emails are bad, and Trump is acting like what you see on your screen is not the worst of it for him. Like whatever else is still hidden in the remaining Epstein files must be worse, because if not, now would be the time to just join the transparency, soldier through a punishing week of already bad news, if the other stuff was going to be similar or less than this for him. Now, we can note Trump denies any wrongdoing, but he is not suggesting that the evidence would clear him. And he's losing more and more Republicans as the time goes. The House is back in session. They have the votes to override what has been the Republican Speaker's effort to hide any remaining Epstein material. That's what Trump wants, which itself is a bit of a tell. Now a coming vote will decide if Congress demands that the DOJ release the complete Epstein files or whatever is legally allowable. That is what, of course, Trump ran on doing and then broke that campaign vow. Speaker Johnson has admitted defeat on this front. He lost his battle to stop any vote. And so now, having lost, he's trying to speed up this period, which is a little different from what he could do. He's now saying today that the coming vote will be sooner than the amount of time allowed under the rules. He is going to have it as soon as next week rather than what he could have done, which is run out the clock longer. And that's probably a calculation that this thing is front burner and looks terrible, and he is in a losing process. And in politics, if you're losing a battle, you try to lose it quickly, go on to the wider war. He is still Speaker, but on the Epstein issue, he's not in charge. He has been overruled by the majority. This thing we talk about, they call it a discharge petition, is when you have enough votes to override the sitting Speaker. It almost never happens, certainly not on a bipartisan basis. And yet here we are because of how this has just taken off. Now, some congressional insiders also say that while Republicans did hold the line for months, joining the Trump-Johnson effort to avoid any vote, so they would have to put their names down in public and thus avoid any further Epstein revelations. Now that the vote is happening, and it'll be in public if it happens next week, and with the damning new emails, insiders say House Republicans will have a lot of pressure here to back transparency and the thing so many of them campaigned on last year instead of more secrecy for the deceased sex trafficker. And the Democrat who backs the Epstein disclosure bill, Ro Khanna, we played a little bit of sound from him just a moment ago, might recognize his face. He is saying that he expects over 40 Republicans could vote against Trump on this. So that is where we're headed. Over here, the people saying nothing matters, you got to wait till the next midterms. And over here is actual reality. Damning new information that Donald Trump, despite being a powerful president with his party controlling Congress, that he couldn't fight back. He could not keep that secret. And the Democrats using their lawful authority on that oversight committee, along with their bipartisan outreach there. I showed you Khanna and Massey, the Republican, to get somewhere on this. There's also more emails that have come out from that later group that I mentioned over the past day. And they show Trump's links to Epstein could go later than was initially suggested by Trump. He had said their relationship had ended, and there is some corroboration that it certainly cooled at one point, and they had this dispute about what was going on at Mar-a-Lago. But in these newly revealed, long secret communications, Epstein asserts that his 2017 Thanksgiving plans included Trump attending in person down there. This is years after Trump said the whole relationship was over. Epstein's tone also seemed to sour on Trump. He slammed his business practices. This was in 2018, discussing that he knows how dirty Donald is and that he guessed the non-lawyers and New York business people had no idea. That refers to a kind of way that Trump does business and other things he may do that people didn't really realize when he was just back as a reality show star or whatnot. Specifically, this was during a period that you might remember if you follow the news. There was a lot of heat on Trump. There was an open Mueller probe. This was before he would go on to lose the 2020 campaign, when he was thought to be ultimately a one-termer. And he was under this pressure, Epstein writing about when Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, cooperated against Trump and ultimately, of course, criticized and testified against him in public, and implicated him in something he had denied any knowledge of, which was a secret hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Now, that kind of NDA arrangement related to allegedly sexual contact is something that Epstein's associates also used and knew about, although in this instance, there was never any crime alleged between Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump, two consenting adults. But the whole idea of a fixer and an NDA and secret stuff, this was Epstein's world. And so he was keyed in on this. And there's a 2018 text message where an unidentified sender says, oh, it'll all blow over. They're really just trying to take down Trump and doing whatever they can to do that. If you remember that period of time, that sounds like someone who is sympathetic to Trump, who sees any investigation or accountability as just kind of a conspiracy to bring him down. But to respond to that, Epstein, who had once been so close to Trump, and we saw them socializing and all the rest, responds, it's wild because I am the one able to take him down. Now, if that's just a random text in the wind, you might not think much of it. Indeed, politics, media, and the sordid circles that Epstein ran in were full of people doing bluster and exaggeration. That's why a real investigation, if it's done by the government or by independent parties, such as what journalists try to do, you take in a lot of different material. So that text alone could be bluster. But couple that text with the earlier corroboration that Epstein was secretly texting and emailing Maxwell, later convicted of sex trafficking crimes, about what Trump did and knowing about the girls and being alone with one. Couple that with Michael Wolff, the Trump author, in the other messages talking to Epstein about basically having a, quote, debt or an ability to blackmail Donald Trump with what Epstein, the sex trafficker, knew about him. And then couple that with Donald Trump's own cabinet member saying that Epstein was a blackmailer. But did the cabinet member know that one of the questions that would soon come up is whether he also could blackmail President Trump? And why did Attorney General Bondi claim that she had more files and evidence to release, including a, quote, client list, and then release a 2-page memo that, remember, it said there's nothing else of any value to the public. She later said there's no client list, and that 2-page memo also said there's no blackmail to investigate. A funny thing to do so many 180s and everyone to keep talking about this type of extortion, by this deceased sex trafficker who keeps bringing up Donald Trump in messages that the Trump administration has tried so hard and failed to keep secret.
So one of the things that is credible to me and is an indicia of reliability is when you have Jeffrey Epstein speaking to Ghislaine Maxwell in at a time period where there's no reason to make up a story about Donald Trump. And Jeffrey Epstein is saying, you know, he has not barked. He has not essentially spoken about me and what he knows about me. And Ghislaine Maxwell says, you know, I was thinking about that too. So she clearly understands what he's saying. She doesn't say, what are you talking about? What would he possibly know? And that's done at a time, and it's between two people where there's no reason for them to be lying to each other about it. And then, of course, you have lots and lots of corroborating evidence, way too much to go into here. What I find interesting is if you're actually doing a real investigation, if you were not doing a cover-up, and we're living through the cover-up, you would not have Todd Blanche tweeting today that he was not aware of these documents. Well, let's take that as face value. Let's assume that is true. That means that there has not been an adequate investigation. It means that they have not subpoenaed and done search warrants of the obvious emails and texts that you would want from Jeffrey Epstein, from Ghislaine Maxwell, from all of the other people. And that's taking what he said as true, that he said that this was something law enforcement did not have.